We're going to solve quadratics. They're in the form x squared plus bx plus c. So this one's the more basic type where you don't have a number multiplied by the x squared value. So we're going to solve them by factoring. So we have x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0. So to factor this, we have to figure out what two numbers add together to equal 1, the number in front of x, the coefficient of x, and multiply together to equal -6. Okay, so we have 3 and -2. Okay, so you're going to use those values that you found to factor this quadratic. So it breaks down to x plus 3 times x minus 2. And make sure you bring down that equals 0. So it's really important when you're solving for a quadratic that it equals 0 on the right side. Because now we can set each parenthesis individually equal to 0 and solve for x. So we have x plus 3 in the first parenthesis. We're going to set that equal to 0. Second parenthesis is x minus 2 equals 0. We're going to solve each for x so we can figure out what x is actually equal to. Here, to get x by itself, since it's plus 3, opposite operation is minus 3. Anything you do to one side of the equal sign, do to the other. 3 minus 3 is 0. So we have x is equal to -3. And add 2 to both sides to get x by itself. And we have x is equal to +2. So if we plug -3 back in for x, the two sides would be equal. 0 would equal 0. And also if you plugged in 2 for x, same thing is true. So these are two solutions for x. All right, so this one's slightly different. We don't have that term in the middle. That means it canceled out. So I could write this as x squared plus 0x minus 49 equals 0, just so you can see what was in the middle canceled out. So that means what adds together to equal 0 and multiplies together to equal -49. Well, to add together to equal 0, it means they have to be opposites. What times itself is 49? 7. So that means one's +7, one's -7. 7 plus -7 is 0. 7 times -7 is -49. So this factors to x plus 7 times x minus 7. Make sure you write down the equal 0. Now we're going to solve each parenthesis, set each one equal to 0. X plus 7 equals 0, and x minus 7 equals 0. You have to set them each individually equal to 0. Now solve for x. To get x by itself, I'm going to subtract 7 on both sides. 7 minus 7 is 0, so x equals -7. And over here, add 7 to both sides. -7 plus 7 is 0, so x equals +7. So those are our two solutions. Because it's x squared, you will get two solutions. So this one does have a number in front of x squared, but as you can see, everything can be divided by 5. So I'm just going to factor 5 out so I can get rid of that. 5 factors out. 5 divided by 5 is 1, so I'm left with x squared. 25 divided by 5 is 5x. Bring down that minus. 30 divided by 5 is 6. That equals 0. Okay, now I can factor. To figure out what I can add together to equal 5, what I can multiply together to equal -6. So in this case, it would be 6 and -1. Okay, so when I rewrite this factored, I do have the 5 on the outside, times x plus 6 times x minus 1 is equal to 0. Okay, so when I'm doing the solving part, I'm going to ignore that 5 because 5 equals 0 doesn't mean anything. I want to know what x is equal to. So we have x plus 6 is equal to 0 and x minus 1 equals 0. Here I need to solve for x by subtracting 6 on both sides. 6 minus 6 is 0. So I get x equals negative 6. And over here, add 1 to both sides. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0, so we have x equals 1. All right, one more, and I'll let you try some on your own. All right, you might have noticed on this one that it doesn't equal 0. That means we have to move that negative 12 to the other side because it has to equal 0 on the right. So I'm going to add 12 to both sides. Negative 12 plus 12 is 0. So my left side is x squared plus 7x plus 12 is equal to 0. So you always have to make it equal 0 on the right. All right, so figure out what we add together to equal 7, what we multiply together to equal 12, and we have 3 and 4. So that means this factors to x plus 3 times x plus 4 is equal to 0. So now set each parenthesis individually equal to 0. X plus 3 equals 0, and x plus 4 equals 0. All right, to get x by itself, I have to get rid of the plus 3 by subtracting 3 on both sides. 3 minus 3 is 0, so I'm left with x equals negative 3. Big 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Subtract 4 on both sides to get x by itself, and I'm left with x equals negative 4. All right? Those are my two solutions. So each problem should have two solutions because you have an x squared value. So I want you to go ahead and try these 4 problems on your own. When you are finished solving them, go ahead and pause it here. Then when you're done, I'll go through the answers with you. All right, so this first one, what adds together to equal 11 multiplies together to equal 18. That's 9 and 2. So you have x plus 9 times x plus 2 is equal to 0. Set each individually equal to 0. X plus 9 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0. Now you have to solve for x. Subtract 9 on both sides. You get x equals negative 9. Over here, to get x by itself, you have to subtract 2 on both sides. X equals negative 2. All right, then on this one, hopefully you figured out that you have positive 12 and negative 12 because remember you can write it x squared plus 0x minus 144 equals 0. So what adds together to equal 0 multiplies together to equal negative 144. Remember, they have to be exact opposites, positive 12 and negative 12. So that means it's x plus 12 times x minus 12 equals 0. So you have x plus 12 equals 0 and x minus 12 equals 0. Solve for x. Get rid of the plus 12 by subtracting 12 on both sides. Get x equals negative 12. Over here, add 12 to both sides, and you get x equals positive 12. All right, number 3, hopefully you factored out the 2. You have 2 times 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we're left with x squared, plus 6 divided by 2 is 3x, minus 20 divided by 2 is 10, equals 0. So now we can factor. What adds together to equal 3 multiplies together to equal negative 10. So you have 5 and negative 2. We have the 2 on the outside times x plus 5 times x minus 2 equals 0. It's okay if you had those switched because, well, in the end you're just solving for x and you're going to still have the same 2 answers. So we have x plus 5 equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0. I'm going to subtract 5 on both sides to get x by itself. So x equals negative 5. Over here, add 2 to both sides to get x by itself. X equals positive 2. And last one, You have to move everything to the left. I'm going to add 4x to both sides to get it to the left side because it's negative. Opposite is plus. So we have x squared plus 4x equals 21 minus 0 is just 21. So I'll have to get the 21 over there. Opposite is minus 21 to both sides. So we have x squared plus 4x minus 21 is equal to 0. All right, had to do all that work just to set it equal to 0. Now we can factor. To figure out what adds together to equal 4, multiplies together to equal negative 21, and that is 7 and negative 3. Okay, so you have x plus 7 times x minus 3 is equal to 0. So set these each individually equal to 0. X plus 7 equals 0, and x minus 3 equals 0. Okay, over here, solve for x by subtracting 7 on both sides. X equals negative 7. And here, add 3 to both sides to get x equals positive 3. That was solving quadratics.